Gunpowder. Gunpowder began not as a weapon, but as a hope for longevity. In ancient China, during the Tang dynasty, alchemists devoted their lives to the search for immortality. They worked in quiet laboratories filled with minerals, herbs, and strange powders, guided by philosophical ideas about balance, energy, and the transformation of matter. Their goal was spiritual and medicinal, to discover an elixir that could extend life or even grant eternal existence. In this atmosphere of careful experimentation, curiosity often outweighed caution. One common practice among these alchemists was the mixing of various natural substances that were believed to contain vital energies. Saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal were all known materials at the time. Saltpeter appeared as crystalline deposits and was associated with preservation and purification. Sulfur was linked to transformation and heat. Charcoal represented the essence of burned wood, already transformed by fire. Separately, these substances had practical uses. Together, they formed something entirely unexpected. Historical records from the 9th century describe mixtures that produced smoke, flames, and sudden bursts of heat. Some texts even warned about dangerous reactions that could burn hands and faces or set entire buildings on fire. These warnings show that the explosive nature of the mixture was discovered early. The alchemists did not celebrate this result as success. For those seeking immortality, violent combustion was a failure. Yet this failure contained the seed of one of history's most influential inventions. Over time, the formula became more refined. Observers noticed that adjusting the ratios changed the intensity of the reaction. A higher proportion of saltpeter increased the speed and power of combustion because it supplied oxygen to the reaction. Charcoal served as fuel, and sulfur lowered the ignition temperature, making the mixture easier to ignite. Without modern chemistry, these early experimenters still learned through repetition and careful observation. Their work slowly transformed a curious accident into a reproducible compound. The earliest uses of gunpowder were not military. It appeared in fireworks and ceremonial displays, especially during festivals meant to ward off evil spirits. Loud noises and bright flashes were believed to have protective qualities. Fireworks fit naturally into Chinese cultural traditions, where spectacle and symbolism played important roles. In this stage, gunpowder was more about ritual and celebration than destruction. Gradually, its energetic properties attracted military interest. Simple bombs, fire arrows, and primitive grenades began to appear. Bamboo tubes filled with gunpowder could burst with force when ignited. These devices were unpredictable, but their psychological effect was powerful. Noise, light, and smoke could frighten enemies and disrupt formations. Over generations, craftsmen improved containment methods, experimenting with metal and thicker materials. Containment allowed pressure to build, and pressure created force. From this principle came the earliest firearms and cannons. The spread of gunpowder beyond China happened through trade routes and conflict. Knowledge traveled along the Silk Road, carried by merchants, engineers, and soldiers. By the 13th century, the Middle East and parts of Europe had begun experimenting with similar mixtures. Each region adapted the technology to its own needs and materials. Recipes were recorded in coded language, sometimes to protect secrets, sometimes because the science itself was not fully understood. In medieval Europe, gunpowder reshaped warfare. Castles designed to resist arrows and siege engines became vulnerable to cannon fire. Thick stone walls could crack under repeated bombardment. Military architecture changed in response, leading to lower, angled fortifications that could absorb impacts. Armies reorganized around artillery and firearms. Battles were no longer decided only by physical strength or close combat skill. Distance and firepower gained importance. This shift influenced political power, territorial control, and the structure of states. Beyond the battlefield, gunpowder found roles in mining and engineering. Controlled explosions allowed workers to break rock more efficiently than manual tools alone. This made resource extraction faster and expanded access to minerals and metals that fueled further technological growth. Roads, tunnels, and canals could be constructed with greater speed. In this sense, gunpowder quietly supported industrial development long before the Industrial Revolution fully unfolded. The scientific understanding of gunpowder also contributed to the growth of chemistry. Scholars analyzing combustion sought to explain why the mixture reacted so violently. Early theories about elements and reactions evolved through attempts to understand such materials. Even incorrect theories pushed investigation forward. The desire to control explosive force led to better measurement, safer storage, and standardized production. These practices reflected a gradual move from mystical experimentation toward systematic science. Culturally, gunpowder changed humanity's relationship with power and distance. A single individual could project force far beyond arm's reach. This altered concepts of defense, authority, and personal security. Hunting practices changed as firearms spread. Exploration and colonization were also affected, as gunpowder weapons gave certain groups military advantages. While many technologies influence history, few do so across as many domains: military, industrial, scientific, and cultural. Despite its destructive associations, gunpowder's story begins with curiosity and hope. The alchemists who first combined its ingredients were searching for harmony between body and nature. They believed in transformation, in the idea that matter could shift from one state to another for the benefit of life. The irony is quiet but profound. A quest for immortality produced a force often linked to mortality. Yet the invention itself is neutral, shaped by how societies choose to use it. The composition of traditional gunpowder remained remarkably stable for centuries, commonly around 75% saltpeter, 15% charcoal, and 10% sulfur. Small variations produced different burn rates and strengths. Grain size mattered as well. Finer grains burned faster, while coarser grains burned more steadily. These details became part of practical knowledge passed from craftsmen to apprentices. Entire professions grew around the safe handling and production of powder. Storage presented constant challenges. Moisture could ruin effectiveness, while sparks could cause disaster. Specialized containers, careful transport, and strict procedures became necessary. These logistical concerns influenced military planning and trade. Supply lines for gunpowder were as critical as those for food. Control over saltpeter sources even became strategically important for some governments. As newer explosives were developed in the 19th century, such as nitroglycerin-based compounds and smokeless powders, traditional gunpowder gradually lost its central role in modern weaponry. Still, it never fully disappeared. It remains in historical firearms, fireworks, and educational demonstrations. Its legacy lives on not only in technology but in the historical paths it helped shape. The accidental discovery of gunpowder illustrates a recurring pattern in human progress. Exploration driven by one goal can open doors to entirely different outcomes. Careful observation turns surprises into knowledge. Knowledge, once shared, reshapes the world in ways the original discoverers could not foresee. In quiet laboratories where alchemists once mixed powders in search of eternal life, they instead unlocked a force that would echo across centuries. Gunpowder's journey from mystical experiment to global influence reflects the unpredictable nature of discovery. It stands as a reminder that history often pivots on moments that begin without grand intention. A mixture prepared in hope became a catalyst for transformation, leaving a mark on warfare, industry, science, and culture. The story unfolds steadily, without drama in its beginning, yet its consequences carry through time with enduring weight. Viagra, Sildenafil. The story of Sildenafil began inside the structured, methodical world of pharmaceutical research, where new medicines are often born from careful planning rather than surprise. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, scientists at Pfizer were working on treatments for cardiovascular conditions, particularly angina pectoris, a type of chest pain caused by reduced blood flow to the heart. At the time, heart disease was a major focus for drug development, and researchers were searching for compounds that could relax blood vessels and improve circulation. Among many experimental molecules, one compound known as UK92 for 80 showed potential. The scientific idea behind sildenafil was grounded in vascular biology. Researchers understood that widening blood vessels could reduce strain on the heart and improve oxygen delivery. The compound worked by influencing nitric oxide signaling in the body, which plays a role in relaxing smooth muscle tissue in blood vessel walls. By enhancing this pathway, sildenafil was expected to help coronary arteries dilate. Early laboratory data suggested measurable vascular effects, enough to justify clinical trials in humans. Clinical testing followed the standard pharmaceutical path. Volunteers with angina participated in controlled studies where researchers monitored heart function, blood pressure, and symptom relief. The results were not particularly impressive for chest pain. The drug did not outperform existing treatments in a meaningful way. From a purely cardiovascular perspective, sildenafil seemed unlikely to become a major therapy. In many research programs, this would have marked the quiet end of development. However, clinical trials often include detailed observation of side effects and patient-reported experiences. During these studies, an unusual pattern emerged. Male participants frequently reported a distinct and consistent side effect: improved erectile function. At first, this was simply recorded as data. Side effects are common in drug trials, and many are considered undesirable. But this effect was different. It was repeatable, noticeable, and directly linked to the drug's mechanism of increasing blood flow. Researchers began to recognize that the same vascular relaxation intended for coronary arteries also affected blood vessels in other parts of the body. Erectile function relies heavily on blood flow dynamics within specific tissues. By enhancing nitric oxide signaling and inhibiting the enzyme phosphodiesterase type 5, PDE5, sildenafil allowed blood vessels in erectile tissue to remain dilated longer. This supported the natural physiological process involved in erections. The effect was not artificial stimulation but facilitation of an existing biological response. Once this pattern became clear, Pfizer scientists reassessed the compound's potential. At that time, treatment options for erectile dysfunction were limited, often invasive or psychologically stigmatized. Many men avoided seeking help due to embarrassment or lack of effective solutions. The discovery suggested a new therapeutic direction, one that addressed a widespread but under-discussed medical condition. Shifting a drug's purpose is not simple. It required new trials, new safety evaluations, and a different regulatory strategy. Researchers designed studies specifically focused on erectile dysfunction, measuring reliability, duration of effect, and overall safety. Results showed that sildenafil was effective for many men across different age groups and medical backgrounds. Importantly, it worked in response to sexual stimulation rather than causing constant effects, which aligned better with normal physiology. Regulatory approval came in 1998 when the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved sildenafil under the brand name Viagra. The approval marked a turning point in both medicine and public conversation. Erectile dysfunction, once rarely discussed openly, became recognized as a legitimate medical issue rather than merely a psychological or aging-related inevitability. This shift helped normalize conversations about men's health and quality of life. The cultural impact of Viagra was immediate and global. Media coverage was widespread, and public awareness grew quickly. For many, the drug symbolized a new era where medical science addressed not only survival but also well-being and intimacy. Doctors received more patients seeking advice for sexual health, leading to broader discussions about cardiovascular health, diabetes, and hormonal balance, conditions often linked to erectile dysfunction. Economically, Viagra became one of the most successful pharmaceutical products of its time. Its success encouraged further research into PDE5 inhibitors, leading to the development of related medications. Competition expanded treatment options and deepened scientific understanding of vascular biology. The commercial success also demonstrated how a drug initially considered a near failure could become transformative when its true application was recognized. From a scientific perspective, sildenafil reinforced the importance of mechanism-based drug design. Understanding biochemical pathways allowed researchers to see why the side effect occurred and how it could be safely utilized. It highlighted how the human body's systems are interconnected. A molecule rarely affects only one organ or pathway. This interconnectedness creates both risks and opportunities in pharmacology. Viagra also influenced how clinical trials were viewed. The careful documentation of side effects proved crucial. What might once have been dismissed as an odd observation became the key to a breakthrough. This encouraged researchers to pay closer attention to patient feedback and unexpected outcomes. In modern drug development, secondary observations sometimes open entirely new therapeutic fields. Socially, the medication contributed to changing attitudes about aging and sexuality. It supported the idea that sexual health remains a valid part of life at many ages. While cultural reactions varied, the overall effect was a gradual reduction in stigma around discussing sexual function. Medical professionals increasingly framed the topic in terms of circulation, neurology, and endocrine health rather than morality or embarrassment. There were also important safety considerations. Sildenafil is not suitable for everyone, particularly individuals taking nitrate medications for heart conditions, because the combination can cause dangerous drops in blood pressure. This reinforced the need for medical supervision and responsible prescribing. The drug's popularity did not remove the importance of careful evaluation, and education became part of its rollout. Over time, sildenafil found additional medical uses beyond erectile dysfunction. It has been used in certain cases to treat pulmonary arterial hypertension, a condition involving high blood pressure in the lungs arteries. This application returned the drug in a way to its original cardiovascular focus, though through a different pathway. It showed how one compound can serve multiple therapeutic roles when its mechanisms are well understood. The journey of Viagra illustrates how scientific progress often moves in indirect paths. A compound designed for one problem revealed value in another area entirely. The discovery was not a moment of chaos, but a gradual recognition built on data, observation, and willingness to reconsider assumptions. The researchers did not set out to change the landscape of sexual medicine, yet their work did exactly that. In the broader history of accidental inventions, sildenafil stands out because the accident was not a single dramatic event. It was a pattern noticed in clinical data, interpreted through scientific reasoning, and developed through structured research. The transformation from a modest heart drug candidate to a globally recognized treatment required careful decision-making at every step. Today, Viagra remains one of the most recognizable pharmaceutical names in the world. Its legacy is tied not only to its function but to the conversations it opened about health, aging, and quality of life. The medication's origin story reflects the reality that discovery often comes from attention rather than intention. By observing what did not fit expectations, scientists uncovered a solution to a different problem. The development of sildenafil shows that progress in medicine is rarely linear. It depends on curiosity, rigorous testing, and openness to unexpected results. A compound once seen as a limited cardiovascular drug became a landmark therapy that influenced science, culture, and industry. Its story unfolds quietly, rooted in laboratories and clinical notes, yet its impact extends into personal lives and global health discussions, demonstrating how unintended findings can reshape entire fields of medicine. Play-Doh. Play-Doh began its existence in a setting far removed from classrooms and playrooms. Its origins lie in the practical concerns of home maintenance during the early 20th century. In the 1930s, many American homes were heated by coal furnaces, which produced significant soot. This soot often settled on walls and wallpaper, leaving dark stains that were difficult to remove. Painted walls were less common than today, and wallpaper required careful cleaning to avoid damage. Ordinary water and cloth could smear the soot rather than lift it. There was a clear demand for a gentle but effective cleaning material. The Q-Tall Products Company, a small family-run soap manufacturer based in Cincinnati, focused on household cleaning solutions. They were approached by a grocery chain with a request for a wallpaper cleaner that could remove soot without harming delicate paper surfaces. The requirement was specific. The cleaner needed to be pliable, non-toxic, and capable of lifting dirt through contact rather than abrasion. Chemists at Q-Tall experimented with dough-like compounds made from simple ingredients. They developed a soft, malleable substance that could be rolled across wallpaper to pick up soot and dust. It functioned much like a reusable cleaning putty. The product worked. It was sold as a wallpaper cleaning compound and gained modest success. Its texture was smooth and slightly elastic, allowing it to conform to surfaces. Because it contained no harsh chemicals, it did not bleach or tear wallpaper. For a time, it met a real need in American households. Yet technological and social changes soon threatened its relevance. By the 1950s, Home heating systems were shifting away from coal to cleaner fuels like natural gas and oil. These systems produced far less soot. At the same time, vinyl and washable wallpapers became popular, allowing people to clean walls with soap and water. The original problem that Qtol's product solved was quietly disappearing. Sales declined, and the company faced financial strain. A practical invention was becoming obsolete. The turning point came from observation rather than laboratory work. A relative of the company's owners, who worked as a nursery school teacher, noticed that children enjoyed modeling shapes from the wallpaper cleaner. The material was soft, easy to mold, and did not dry out quickly when handled. Unlike traditional clay, it did not crumble or stick heavily to small hands. It could be reshaped repeatedly without immediate hardening. In a classroom environment, these qualities were valuable. This observation led to a reconsideration of the product's purpose. The substance was already non-toxic, which made it safer for children. However, it still needed adjustments. The original formula included detergents intended for cleaning, which were unnecessary for play. These were removed. Fragrance was added to make the experience more pleasant, and eventually color was introduced. Early versions were off-white, but bright colors made the material more visually engaging for children. Red, yellow, and blue became early staples. Rebranding followed. The compound was no longer presented as a cleaner but as a modeling material for creative play. The name Play-Doh was adopted to reflect its new identity. Marketing emphasized imagination, tactile learning, and open-ended creativity. Demonstrations in schools and educational programs helped introduce the product to teachers and parents. Television advertising in the mid-20th century further expanded its visibility, especially during children's programming. Play-Doh fit well into educational philosophies that valued hands-on learning. Manipulating soft material supports fine motor skill development in young children. Rolling, pinching, and shaping engage small muscles in the hands and fingers. These actions are linked to coordination and early writing readiness. While Play-Doh was not invented as an educational tool, its properties aligned naturally with developmental needs. Teachers found it useful for quiet, focused activities that encouraged creativity without requiring complex instructions. The sensory qualities of Play-Doh also contributed to its appeal. Its texture is consistent and forgiving. It offers gentle resistance when pressed but yields easily to shaping. The mild scent became a recognizable feature, associated with familiarity and comfort for many users. Sensory engagement plays a role in how children explore and understand their environment. Materials that respond predictably to touch can support calm concentration. From a manufacturing perspective, the formula remained relatively simple. Flour, water, salt, and stabilizing ingredients formed the base. High salt content acted as a preservative, slowing microbial growth. Airtight containers helped retain moisture and extend usability. These practical decisions supported mass production and long shelf life. A product originally made in small batches for a narrow purpose became standardized for global distribution. Culturally, Play-Doh became associated with childhood creativity. It did not impose rules or goals. Unlike structured toys with fixed outcomes, it allowed open-ended use. A child could form animals, shapes, letters, or abstract forms. The value was in the process rather than the result. This aligned with broader ideas about creative development in early education during the mid-20th century, when imagination and self-expression were increasingly encouraged. The success of Play-Doh also illustrates how adaptability can extend a product's life. Qtol Products Company eventually restructured around the new identity of this modeling compound. What began as a near-obsolete cleaner became the company's defining product. This shift required not only formula changes but also a different understanding of the market. The audience moved from homeowners to children, parents, and educators. Packaging, messaging, and distribution all evolved accordingly. Play-Doh's influence is subtle compared to industrial inventions, yet it is meaningful in everyday life. It shaped play patterns for generations. Many adults remember its texture and scent with clarity, linking it to early creative experiences. Such associations show how objects can carry emotional memory alongside practical function. The product's consistency over decades helped maintain that familiarity. There were also practical lessons in safety and design. Because children interact closely with the material, non-toxicity remained essential. While not meant for consumption, its ingredients were selected to minimize harm if accidentally ingested in small amounts. This approach reflected growing awareness of child safety standards in consumer products. Testing and regulation became part of responsible manufacturing. The accidental transformation of Play-Doh did not happen in a single moment. It unfolded through recognition of how people actually used the material. The company observed behavior, listened to feedback, and allowed the product's identity to shift. The original intention, cleaning soot, faded, replaced by a role in creative development. The material itself changed only slightly. The meaning attached to it changed profoundly. In the broader context of accidental inventions, Play-Doh represents a quiet kind of discovery. There was no dramatic laboratory mishap or sudden breakthrough. Instead, there was attention to everyday use and a willingness to see value in an unexpected context. A cleaning compound became a creative tool because someone noticed how it was already being used. Today, Play-Doh remains a familiar presence in homes and schools. Its design is simple, its purpose open-ended. It does not rely on technology or complexity. Its endurance suggests that some inventions succeed not through sophistication but through responsiveness to human behavior. The story reflects how observation and adaptation can turn a declining product into a lasting one. The journey of Play-Doh shows that invention is not always about creating something entirely new. Sometimes it is about seeing existing materials differently. A compound meant to remove dirt from walls found a second life in the hands of children shaping small worlds. The shift was practical, gradual, and grounded in real use. From household cleaner to creative staple, its path reveals how accidental insight can quietly change the role an object plays in daily life. Super Soaker. The origin of the Super Soaker begins not in the toy industry, but in the precise and technical world of aerospace engineering. Its inventor, Lonnie George Johnson, was a trained engineer and inventor with a deep interest in how systems move and control energy. He worked on advanced projects related to space and defense, environments where precision, safety, and performance were critical. His professional life revolved around solving complex technical problems, often involving fluid dynamics, energy transfer, and mechanical efficiency. The path to one of the world's most famous toys emerged quietly from this background. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Johnson was experimenting at home with a new type of heat pump. Heat pumps move thermal energy from one place to another, often using fluids under pressure. While testing a prototype in his bathroom, he connected components that allowed water to move through a nozzle. When he activated the system, a powerful stream of water shot across the room with surprising force and distance. The stream was clean, focused, and far stronger than a typical household squirt device. The moment was not planned as a toy demonstration, yet it revealed a compelling possibility. Johnson immediately recognized that the mechanism had potential beyond its original purpose. The water stream was controlled, repeatable, and efficient. At the time, most water guns on the market were simple squeeze toys that released small amounts of water with limited range. They relied on direct mechanical pressure from a trigger or bulb. Johnson's prototype used stored pressure, allowing it to project water farther and more consistently. This difference was not cosmetic. It changed how the device performed in a fundamental way. Turning a concept into a product required a different kind of work. Johnson refined the design to make it safe, portable, and suitable for repeated use. The key principle was a pressure chamber. By pumping air into a sealed reservoir partially filled with water, pressure could build gradually. When released through a valve, the compressed air forced water outward in a steady stream. This separated the pumping action from the firing action, allowing stronger output without excessive force from the user at the moment of release. In 1982, Johnson filed for a patent for his pressurized water gun design. The technical concept was solid, but bringing it to market proved challenging. Toy companies initially showed limited interest. The design was more complex than existing water toys, and manufacturers often prefer predictable, low-risk products. Johnson spent years pitching the idea, building prototypes, and demonstrating the difference in performance. His persistence reflected a belief in the engineering rather than a trend-driven vision. Eventually, a partnership formed with Laramie Corporation, a toy company willing to develop the idea. Engineers and designers worked to adapt Johnson's mechanism into a consumer-friendly product. Materials had to be durable but lightweight. The pump needed to be reliable in the hands of children. Safety considerations were central, ensuring that pressure levels remained within safe limits. The final design balanced performance with usability. When the product launched in 1990 under the name Power Drencher, it already stood apart from typical water guns. Soon after, it was rebranded as the Super Soaker, a name that emphasized its defining feature: the ability to soak a target thoroughly from a distance. The name was simple, memorable, and descriptive. Demonstrations showed streams of water traveling far beyond what people expected from a toy. The difference was immediately visible. The Super Soaker arrived at a time when outdoor play still held a strong place in childhood culture. Summer activities often centered on physical games and neighborhood interaction. The new water blaster fit naturally into this environment. It did not rely on electronics or screens. Its appeal was direct and physical. Range, accuracy, and the playful competition of water battles. Children quickly noticed that it offered a clear advantage over older toys. Sales grew rapidly. The Super Soaker became one of the best-selling toys of the early 1990s. Its success was driven not only by marketing but by genuine performance. Word of mouth mattered. When a product clearly behaves differently, users share the experience. The toy's transparent or brightly colored reservoirs also made the water level visible, adding a visual element to play. Seeing the chamber fill and empty made the mechanics intuitive. Culturally, the Super Soaker helped redefine what a water toy could be. It introduced the idea that even simple play objects could benefit from thoughtful engineering. The toy was not complicated to use, but its internal design was based on real physical principles. Pressure, air compression, and fluid flow were all quietly at work inside a playful form. Many users never thought about the physics, yet they experienced its results. For Lonnie Johnson, the invention also represented something larger. As an engineer and inventor, he held numerous patents across different fields. The Super Soaker became his most publicly recognized invention, but it was only one example of his broader work in energy and technology. The toy's success provided financial returns that supported further research and innovation. In this way, a playful product indirectly supported serious scientific exploration. The manufacturing side evolved as well. New models introduced larger reservoirs, multiple nozzles, and improved pumping efficiency. Variations appeared, but the core principle remained the same: stored pressure driving water release. This consistency shows how a strong foundational design can support many iterations without losing identity. The essential experience stayed recognizable. The Super Soaker also influenced the toy industry's expectations. It demonstrated that children respond to performance improvements, not just appearance. A toy that works noticeably better can reshape a category. Competitors began developing their own pressurized designs, expanding the market for high-performance water blasters. Innovation followed demand. There is a quiet irony in the invention's origin. A device connected to heat transfer and energy efficiency led to a toy associated with summer fun. The underlying science did not change. Only the application did. Fluid under pressure behaves the same whether in a laboratory or a backyard. The difference lies in purpose and context. Johnson's awareness allowed him to see potential where others might see only a test result. The story of the Super Soaker reflects how invention often grows from curiosity and side experimentation. Johnson was not trying to revolutionize toys. He was exploring engineering ideas. The accidental spray across a bathroom was simply a moment of observation. Recognizing significance in that moment required technical understanding and imaginative flexibility. Many experiments produce unexpected results, but not all are recognized as opportunities. Over time, the Super Soaker became a symbol of summer play. It appeared in advertisements, family gatherings, and outdoor games. Its presence was seasonal yet recurring, tied to warm weather and shared activity. Such associations give objects a place in memory. The toy's function was simple, but its experiences were social. From a technical viewpoint, the invention shows how energy storage can improve efficiency. By separating input effort from output release, systems can deliver stronger results without requiring constant force. This principle appears in many machines and tools. In the Super Soaker, it was expressed in a playful form. The pump built pressure gradually. The trigger released it instantly. The user felt the difference without needing to analyze it. The accidental path of the Super Soaker was not chaotic. It was a steady progression from observation to refinement to production. Each step required intention. The accident was the initial redirection, not the entire journey. The rest depended on design, testing, and persistence. This pattern appears in many inventions that endure. Today, the Super Soaker remains recognizable decades after its debut. Its design language and core function are still understood. The toy did not change the world through industry or medicine, but it influenced play, design thinking, and the perception of what a toy could achieve. It stands as an example of how engineering principles can enter daily life in unexpected ways. The story unfolds calmly. An engineer testing a heat pump, a stream of water crossing a room, a recognition of potential. From that moment grew a product that reached millions of people. The transformation from laboratory experiment to backyard staple illustrates how invention sometimes follows gentle, indirect paths. A controlled stream of water, guided by pressure and design, became a familiar part of summer for a generation. Chocolate chip cookies. The chocolate chip cookie, now a familiar and widely loved dessert, began with a small decision made in a working kitchen rather than a research laboratory. Its origin is often traced to the 1930s in the United States, during a time when home cooking and baking played a central role in daily life. Recipes were commonly shared through community networks, newspapers, and cookbooks. Baking was both a practical skill and a social expression, especially in establishments that served homemade meals. In this environment, small variations in ingredients could quietly lead to lasting changes. Ruth Wakefield, a dietitian and food lecturer, operated the Toll House Inn in Whitman, Massachusetts, with her husband. The inn served home-style meals and desserts to travelers. Wakefield was known for careful cooking and attention to detail. She tested recipes to maintain consistent quality for guests. One of her desserts was a butter drop cookie, a traditional recipe that used baker's chocolate melted into the dough to create a uniform chocolate flavor. Baker's chocolate was unsweetened and typically melted fully during preparation. According to the commonly told account, Wakefield decided to modify this recipe one day. She chopped a Nestle semi-sweet chocolate bar into small pieces and mixed them into the dough, expecting them to melt and disperse throughout during baking. The expectation was reasonable based on how other chocolates behaved when heated. However, the chocolate pieces did not fully melt. Instead, they softened and retained much of their shape. When the cookies cooled, they contained distinct bits of chocolate embedded in the dough. This result was not the intended outcome, but it produced a pleasing contrast. The cookie itself was buttery and lightly crisp at the edges, while the chocolate pieces offered pockets of sweetness and a softer texture. The combination created variation within each bite. Guests at the Toll House Inn responded positively. The cookies became a popular item, requested by visitors and shared by word of mouth. What began as a small recipe change gradually formed a new style of cookie. The recipe was later published in a Boston area newspaper and included in Wakefield's cookbook, Toll House Tried and True Recipes. As readers tried the recipe at home, its popularity grew. The instructions called specifically for chopped semi-sweet chocolate, which linked the cookie to a particular ingredient rather than a general flavor. This detail helped standardize the result. Home bakers could reproduce the cookies with similar outcomes. Nestle recognized the growing interest. The company made an agreement with Wakefield to print her recipe on their chocolate packaging. In return, she reportedly received a lifetime supply of chocolate. Nestle also began producing chocolate pieces shaped and sized for baking, making the process more convenient. These pieces eventually became known as chocolate chips. Standardizing the size improved consistency in baking and helped the cookie spread nationally. From a culinary perspective, the chocolate chip cookie represented a shift in texture design. Instead of a uniform mixture, it featured contrast within a single baked good. The dough provided structure, while the chocolate chips acted as inclusions. This idea of mix-ins later appeared in many baked products, from nuts to dried fruit. The cookie showed that variation within a simple base could be appealing. It balanced sweetness, richness, and texture without complex decoration. The timing also mattered. The 1930s and 1940s were periods when packaged ingredients and branded products became more common in American kitchens. Reliable access to flour, sugar, and chocolate supported recipe consistency. As wartime and post-war economies evolved, baking at home remained a meaningful activity. Cookies were practical to make in batches and share. The chocolate chip cookie fit well into this pattern. During World War II, care packages sent to soldiers often included cookies because they traveled relatively well. Some accounts suggest that soldiers from Massachusetts shared Toll House cookies with others, helping spread awareness. Whether through this route or through cookbooks and packaging, the cookie became widely known across the country. Its identity grew from regional specialty to national staple. The science behind the cookie is straightforward but important. Butter contributes flavor and affects texture, depending on how it is creamed with sugar. Sugar influences browning and moisture retention. Flour provides structure through gluten formation. Baking temperature controls spread and caramelization. Chocolate chips contain cocoa solids and cocoa butter, which soften when heated, but can hold shape due to their formulation. Together, these elements create a predictable baking process that home cooks can repeat. Over time, variations appeared. Some bakers preferred softer centers, others crisp edges. Adjustments in sugar ratios, chilling time, or baking duration allowed customization. Yet the core identity remained: a cookie with visible chocolate pieces. The original idea did not require elaborate technique. Its accessibility helped it endure. A recipe that works in many kitchens has a greater chance of becoming tradition. Culturally, the chocolate chip cookie became associated with comfort and hospitality. It often appears in informal settings: family kitchens, school events, and community gatherings. Its ingredients are familiar, and its preparation is manageable for beginners. Because it does not depend on rare tools or decorations, it fits into everyday life. This familiarity contributes to its lasting presence. Commercial bakeries and food companies later adapted the cookie for mass production. Packaged dough, ready-to-bake forms, and pre-made cookies extended its reach. Industrial production required attention to shelf life, moisture control, and consistency. Even in these formats, the recognizable appearance of chocolate chips remained central. The visual cue signals the flavor before a bite is taken. The story of the chocolate chip cookie illustrates how culinary discovery can emerge from routine practice. Wakefield was not trying to invent a new category of dessert. She was preparing food for guests and adjusting a recipe. The outcome depended on how a specific chocolate behaved under heat. Observing and accepting the result allowed the recipe to continue. Sharing it allowed it to spread. There is also a lesson in expectation. Not all ingredients react the same way, even within a category like chocolate. Composition affects melting point and texture. The semi-sweet chocolate pieces held their form enough to create contrast. That small material difference shaped the final product. Cooking often involves such interactions, where chemistry meets technique. The cookie's influence is mostly culinary rather than technological. Yet it is meaningful in daily life. It shaped baking habits, ingredient marketing, and recipe traditions. It also showed how a single recipe can connect a brand, a place, and a person. The Toll House name remains linked to the cookie's history. This connection between origin and identity helps stories endure. The accidental nature of the cookie's creation is gentle rather than dramatic. There was no crisis or failure, only a result that differed from expectation. Recognizing that the result was enjoyable allowed it to continue. Many recipes evolve through such moments, but only a few spread widely. Consistency, accessibility, and taste all contributed here. Today, the chocolate chip cookie is one of the most recognized cookies in the world. It appears in homes, bakeries, and stores across many countries. This basic form remains close to the early versions. Ingredients may vary slightly, but the idea of dough with embedded chocolate pieces stays constant. This continuity shows how a simple concept can persist. The path from a chopped chocolate bar in a Massachusetts kitchen to a global dessert was gradual. It moved through sharing, printing, packaging, and repetition. Each step was ordinary, yet together they formed a lasting culinary tradition. The invention did not rely on new machinery or complex science. It relied on observation, taste, and communication. In the broader pattern of accidental inventions, the chocolate chip cookie represents how everyday creativity can shape culture. A small change in preparation led to a widely adopted recipe. The story unfolds quietly. A baker, a chocolate bar, an unexpected texture. From that combination grew a dessert that continues to be made and enjoyed. Its history reflects how simple decisions in familiar settings can leave a long culinary legacy. Ice cream cone. The ice cream cone emerged from a simple need combined with observation, in a time when ice cream itself was already a popular treat but its serving methods were still evolving. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, ice cream was commonly served in dishes, glasses, or paper containers. Vendors at fairs and public events faced practical challenges. Dishes required washing, paper containers cost money and created waste, and both limited how quickly a seller could serve large crowds. These small logistical concerns formed the background for a quiet but meaningful change. At large gatherings and world fairs in the United States, food vendors worked in close proximity, each managing limited space and resources. The 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis is often associated with the popularization of the ice cream cone. While historians note that edible cones and wafer cups existed earlier in various forms, the fair provided a setting where one particular moment helped bring the idea into public awareness. The environment was busy, warm, and crowded, ideal conditions for ice cream sales. Vendors needed speed and convenience. One widely told account describes an ice cream vendor who ran out of serving dishes during a rush of customers. Nearby, a waffle vendor was making thin, crisp pastries. These waffles were flexible when warm and became firm as they cooled. Faced with the immediate problem of how to continue serving, the solution appeared in collaboration. The waffle vendor rolled a fresh waffle into a cone shape, creating a pointed base and open top. Ice cream could be placed inside, held comfortably by hand, and eaten without any extra utensil or container. Whether this exact exchange happened in a single decisive moment or developed through several similar experiments, the principle was clear. A thin baked wafer could function as both container and food. The cone held the ice cream securely while adding flavor and texture. It solved the vendor's problem and improved the customer's experience. There was no need to return a dish or discard a cup. The entire serving was edible. The idea fit naturally into existing baking traditions. Wafers, pizzelles, and rolled pastries had long histories in European cuisines. Street vendors in parts of Europe had already paired sweets with edible holders. The cone did not appear from nowhere. It was an adaptation. What changed at the fair was visibility and scale. Thousands of visitors encountered the concept in a short period. Many experienced the convenience firsthand. From a sensory perspective, the cone added contrast. Ice cream is cold and smooth, while the cone is dry and crisp. This combination engages multiple textures in one dessert. As the ice cream slowly melts, the cone absorbs a small amount of moisture but ideally retains structure long enough to be eaten. The design encourages a particular pace of eating, guided by temperature and texture. These physical qualities helped the cone feel satisfying rather than merely practical. Manufacturing soon followed demand. Specialized cone baking irons were developed to create uniform shapes. Batter formulas were adjusted to balance sweetness, strength, and crispness. Too fragile and the cone would crack. Too thick and it would feel heavy. Bakers refined recipes to produce cones that could hold a scoop without leaking quickly. The pointed bottom, while iconic, also required careful handling to prevent drips. Over time, flat-bottomed cones appeared as well, offering more stability. The cone also influenced how ice cream was sold. Portable servings allowed vendors to operate carts and stands more easily. Customers could walk while eating, turning ice cream into a mobile treat rather than a seated dessert. This mobility matched the rhythms of fairs, parks, and city streets. Ice cream became more integrated into casual outdoor life. The cone supported this shift without needing complex technology. Commercialization expanded in the following decades. Factories began producing cones at scale, supplying ice cream parlors and grocery stores. Packaging methods protected cones from moisture and breakage. Standard sizes made portioning predictable. The pairing of cone and scoop became a visual symbol associated with ice cream itself. Illustrations and advertisements often depicted a swirl of ice cream rising above a cone, reinforcing the image. Culturally, the ice cream cone came to represent leisure and simple pleasure. It appeared in summer scenes, family outings, and public celebrations. Its affordability and portability made it accessible to many people. Unlike elaborate desserts served on plates, a cone required no ceremony, could be enjoyed spontaneously. This informality contributed to its popularity. The accidental element in the cone's story lies in the response to circumstance. A shortage of dishes or a desire for efficiency prompted experimentation. The solution used materials already present. Flour batter, heat, and quick shaping created a container at the moment it was needed. Recognition of its usefulness allowed it to continue beyond that day. Many food traditions begin in such practical adjustments. There is also a design logic in the cone shape. The wide opening holds a scoop securely, while the narrowing base concentrates structural support. The shape fits comfortably in the hand. It distributes weight downward, reducing the chance of collapse when made correctly. These physical advantages are simple but effective. They show how form can follow function even in food. Over time, variations appeared. Sugar cones are sweeter and firmer, cake cones are lighter and more neutral, and waffle cones are richer with a pronounced pattern. Each type balances flavor and strength differently. Some are molded, others rolled. The diversity reflects both regional preferences and manufacturing techniques. Yet the core idea remains unchanged: an edible holder for ice cream. The cone also shaped portion perception. A scoop in a cone looks generous because it rises above the rim. The visual height enhances appeal. Presentation influences expectation, and the cone offers a natural display. The contrast between the pale ice cream and the golden brown cone is visually pleasing. Such details matter in food enjoyment. From a business perspective, the cone reduced certain costs. It minimized the need for reusable dishware and washing. It simplified service in busy environments. These efficiencies support higher sales volume. A small operational improvement can have lasting impact when repeated daily across many vendors. The cone quietly improved workflow. The story does not depend on a single inventor. Multiple vendors and bakers likely contributed to refining and spreading the idea. Food history often evolves collectively. A technique proves useful, others adopt it, and it becomes standard. Attribution can be complex, but the functional result is clear. The cone endured because it worked well. In the broader pattern of accidental inventions, the ice cream cone reflects adaptation to immediate needs. There was no grand plan to change how ice cream was served. There was a situation, available materials, and a practical response. Observation and repetition turned that response into tradition. The process was gradual and grounded in daily work. Today, the ice cream cone is recognized worldwide. It appears in shops, festivals, and homes. This presence is so common that it can feel timeless. Yet it belongs to a specific history of street vending, fairs, and food innovation. The success rests on simplicity. Few parts, familiar ingredients, and a clear purpose. The cone also connects eating with movement. Holding it requires attention as the ice cream melts. The experience is active. One eats before it drips, guided by temperature and gravity. This interaction creates a small sense of urgency that is part of the enjoyment. The design encourages engagement with the food. The quiet invention of the ice cream cone shows how small improvements can become lasting norms. A rolled wafer solved a serving problem and added pleasure. The idea spread because it was practical and enjoyable. No complex machinery was required at first, only heat, batter, and quick hands. Later, machines increased scale, but the principle stayed the same. The story unfolds calmly. A busy fair, a vendor needing a container, a warm waffle shaped into a cone. From that moment of practicality grew a standard way to serve a beloved dessert. The ice cream cone stands as a reminder that innovation often appears in everyday settings. A simple edible container changed how people enjoy ice cream, leaving a mark on food culture that continues quietly with each scoop placed into a cone. Kevlar. Kevlar emerged from a research program focused not on safety equipment, but on improving materials for the automotive industry. In the early 1960s, chemists at DuPont were searching for new synthetic fibers that could be used in tires. The goal was to find materials that were strong yet lightweight, helping reduce vehicle weight and improve fuel efficiency. Steel had long been used to reinforce tires, but it added mass. A lighter alternative could offer both performance and economic benefits. Within this industrial context, polymer chemistry became a field of intense exploration. One of the chemists working on this challenge was Stephanie Kwolek. She had a background in polymer research and was known for her careful laboratory methods. Polymer chemistry often involves dissolving long-chain molecules in solvents and then spinning them into fibers. The properties of the final fiber depend on how these molecules align and interact. Many experimental solutions are clear or slightly cloudy, and their behavior during processing follows familiar patterns. Researchers develop expectations based on experience. In 1965, Kwolek prepared a polymer solution that behaved differently. Instead of being clear and viscous like typical spinning solutions, it appeared thin and cloudy. Such a mixture might usually be set aside because cloudiness can indicate poor dissolution or instability. However, Kwolek noticed that the solution flowed in an unusual way. Its texture suggested that something distinct was happening at the molecular level. Rather than discarding it, she chose to investigate further. She requested that the solution be spun into fibers using a spinneret, a device that extrudes liquid polymer through tiny holes to form filaments. The technician operating the equipment was hesitant because the solution did not look suitable. Still, the test proceeded. When the fibers formed, they showed unexpected strength. Initial measurements indicated high stiffness and resistance to stretching. This was not typical for experimental fibers at that stage. The unusual properties came from the molecular structure. Kevlar belongs to a class of materials known as aramid fibers, short for aromatic polyamides. These polymer chains are relatively rigid and tend to align in parallel. When aligned, the chains form strong intermolecular bonds, including hydrogen bonds, that hold the structure tightly together. This alignment creates high tensile strength, meaning the material resists being pulled apart. The strength-to-weight ratio became one of its defining features. Further testing confirmed the fiber's remarkable performance. It was several times stronger than steel by weight. It also resisted heat and did not melt easily, instead decomposing at high temperatures. These characteristics made it stable under conditions where many synthetic fibers would fail. The combination of strength, low weight, and thermal stability opened possibilities beyond tire reinforcement. Although the original goal was tire applications, researchers recognized broader uses. One area of interest was protective gear. Materials that can absorb and distribute energy are valuable in protection. When layered and woven, Kevlar fibers can help slow and spread the force of impacts. This does not make a material invulnerable, but it can significantly reduce penetration and injury under certain conditions. Over time, Kevlar became associated with bullet-resistant vests and helmets. The development of body armor using Kevlar involved careful design. Layers of woven fabric create a network that catches and disperses energy. The fibers themselves do not stop objects through hardness like metal plates. Instead, they work by tensile strength and energy absorption. The object's force is distributed across many fibers, reducing the chance of penetration. This approach allows flexibility and lighter weight compared to rigid armor. Kevlar also found uses in aerospace, marine equipment, and industrial applications. Its resistance to heat and chemicals made it suitable for protective clothing in hazardous environments. It appeared in ropes, cables, and composite materials where strength and low weight matter. In sports equipment, it contributed to durable yet lightweight designs. Each application relied on the same core properties: high tensile strength and stability. From a manufacturing standpoint, producing Kevlar requires controlled conditions. The polymers must be synthesized precisely and dissolved in strong acids to form a liquid crystal solution. This solution allows molecular alignment before spinning. As the fibers are formed and drawn, alignment increases, enhancing strength. The process demands accuracy in temperature, concentration, and handling. Small deviations can affect performance. The discovery also influenced polymer science. It showed that molecular orientation could dramatically change material properties. Researchers studied how rigid rod-like polymers behave differently from flexible chains. This contributed to understanding liquid crystalline polymers and high-performance materials. The lesson was that structure at the microscopic level shapes behavior at the macroscopic level. Culturally, Kevlar became associated with safety and protection. Its name often appears in discussions of personal protective equipment. While no material guarantees absolute safety, improvements in protective gear can reduce risk. The presence of advanced fibers changed expectations for what protective clothing could achieve. Lighter gear can improve mobility and comfort, which can influence whether it is used consistently. Stephanie Kwolek's role highlights the importance of attention in research. The initial solution did not match expectations. It might have been dismissed as a failed mixture. Recognizing that it behaved differently allowed the discovery to continue. Scientific work often includes such moments where observation guides the next step. Persistence and curiosity help turn anomalies into knowledge. The accidental aspect of Kevlar's story lies in its departure from the original goal. The research aimed at tire reinforcement. The breakthrough fiber became more widely known for protection and high-performance uses. The path from one application to another involved testing and evaluation. Discoveries often move this way, from a specific problem to broader utility. Kevlar's durability also brings practical considerations. While strong in tension, it can be sensitive to ultraviolet light over long periods and may degrade under certain conditions. Protective coatings or design choices help address these limits. Understanding both strengths and limits is part of responsible material use. No material is perfect in all contexts. Over decades, variations and related fibers have been developed, but Kevlar remains a reference point for high-strength aramid fibers. Its introduction marked a step forward in synthetic materials. It demonstrated that lightweight fibers could compete with metals in some roles. This influenced design thinking in multiple industries. The story unfolds steadily in a laboratory. A polymer solution that looked unusual, a decision to test it, and measurements that revealed strength. From that sequence grew a material with wide impact. The process was grounded in chemistry and methodical testing rather than dramatic events. The discovery required recognizing value in an unexpected result. In the broader theme of accidental inventions, Kevlar shows how research aimed at one target can yield something valuable in another area. The key moment was not a mishap but a careful look at a result that did not fit the usual pattern. Following that lead produced a fiber with distinctive properties. Its journey from experimental polymer to widely used material reflects how science progresses through observation and refinement. Today, Kevlar is part of many products that rely on strength without excessive weight. Its presence is often hidden within layers or composites, doing its work quietly. The material itself does not announce its complexity, but its performance reflects detailed chemistry and engineering. The legacy of its discovery lies in how molecular design can translate into real-world function. The development of Kevlar illustrates a calm progression from curiosity to application. A cloudy solution led to a strong fiber. A search for tire materials contributed to protective technologies and advanced composites. The path was indirect but grounded in careful work. This pattern appears often in innovation, where attention to the unexpected opens new directions. Kevlar's history remains a clear example of how observation in the laboratory can shape materials used across the world. Listerine. Listerine began its history not as a breath freshener, but as a medical antiseptic developed in a period when the understanding of germs and infection was still forming. In the 19th century, medicine was undergoing a gradual transition. The germ theory of disease, which proposed that microorganisms cause infections, was gaining acceptance. Surgeons and physicians were beginning to recognize the importance of cleanliness and chemical antiseptics. Within this environment, chemists searched for compounds that could safely reduce microbial growth on living tissue and instruments. In 1879, a chemist named Joseph Lawrence formulated a liquid antiseptic solution. His work was inspired by the research of Sir Joseph Lister, a British surgeon who promoted antiseptic techniques in surgery. Lister advocated using chemical disinfectants to reduce post-surgical infections, a practice that significantly improved survival rates. In recognition of Lister's influence, Lawrence named his formulation Listerine. The name signaled a connection to modern antiseptic science and medical credibility. The original formulation combined several compounds, including alcohol and essential oil components such as thymol, eucalyptol, menthol, and methyl salicylate. These ingredients were known for their antiseptic or aromatic properties. Alcohol acted as a solvent and preservative while also contributing antimicrobial action. The essential oils added both scent and biological activity. Together, they produced a solution that could inhibit certain bacteria and provide a strong medicinal aroma. At first, Listerine was marketed to doctors as a surgical antiseptic. It was intended for cleaning wounds and sterilizing medical instruments. During this period, many antiseptics were harsh or irritating. A formulation that balanced effectiveness with tolerable use had practical value. Listerine found a place among the range of disinfecting products used in clinical settings. Its identity was medical and professional rather than domestic. As the product circulated, its potential uses expanded. It was promoted for cleaning minor cuts, treating foot infections, and even as a floor cleaner in some contexts. Such multipurpose marketing was not unusual at the time. Chemical products often served several roles before becoming specialized. The boundaries between medical, household, and personal care products were less defined than they are today. The shift toward oral hygiene came gradually. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, dentistry and oral health were receiving more scientific attention. Bacteria in the mouth were linked to plaque, gum disease, and tooth decay. Mechanical cleaning with brushes addressed part of the problem, but chemical rinses offered another approach. Listerine's antiseptic properties made it a candidate for oral use when diluted appropriately. By the early 20th century, the product began to be marketed as a mouthwash. This transition required careful framing. Consumers needed to see oral hygiene as a health practice, not merely cosmetic. Advertising played a significant role. Campaigns emphasized the idea that invisible bacteria could cause problems even when teeth appeared clean. This message aligned with the growing public awareness of germs. One of the most notable marketing strategies involved the concept of halitosis, a clinical term for bad breath. While bad breath had always existed, it was not widely discussed in medicalized terms. Listerine advertisements framed halitosis as a social and personal concern with hygienic solutions. The messaging suggested that people might be unaware of their own condition and that it could affect social interactions. This approach connected oral hygiene to social confidence. The strategy was effective. Sales increased as consumers associated mouthwash with cleanliness and courtesy. The idea that a rinse could reduce oral bacteria and freshen breath fit into daily routines. Listerine thus transitioned from a surgical antiseptic to a household hygiene product. The liquid remained similar in composition, but its purpose in the public mind shifted. Scientifically, the essential oils in Listerine can disrupt bacterial cell membranes and reduce microbial populations in the mouth. While not a substitute for brushing and flossing, antimicrobial rinses can complement mechanical cleaning. The alcohol content also contributes to preservation and solubility, though formulations have evolved over time to include alcohol-free versions for those who prefer them. Research into oral microbiology continues to refine how such products are used. Culturally, Listerine became part of the broader movement toward personal hygiene in the 20th century. Regular bathing, toothbrushing, and grooming were increasingly presented as social norms. Consumer products supported these habits. Mouthwash fit into a growing market for personal care items that promised cleanliness and confidence. The bathroom cabinet gradually filled with specialized products. From a business perspective, Listerine illustrates how repositioning can redefine a product. Its core chemistry did not change dramatically at first, but its marketing and context did. The company recognized a need and aligned the product with it. This required education, persuasion, and consistent messaging. Over time, the association between Listerine and oral care became strong. There were also regulatory and safety considerations. Products used in the mouth require evaluation for safety and proper labeling. As consumer protection standards developed, manufacturers provided clearer instructions and warnings. The evolution of regulation shaped how antiseptic products were described and sold. Scientific claims increasingly needed support. The accidental element in Listerine's story lies in its shifting purpose. It was not invented to be a mouthwash. It began as a surgical antiseptic and household disinfectant. Its eventual role in oral hygiene emerged through observation of its properties and changing public health perspectives. The transition was gradual, guided by opportunity rather than a single event. Listerine's strong taste and sensation also became part of its identity. The intense flavor signaled effectiveness to many users. Sensory experience can influence perception. A noticeable tingle may suggest activity, even though actual antimicrobial action depends on chemistry and exposure time. Manufacturers balanced flavor and function to encourage regular use. Over decades, the brand expanded into variations with different flavors and targeted benefits. Yet the core idea remained: a liquid rinse aimed at reducing oral bacteria and freshening breath. This continuity shows how a product can adapt while retaining identity. The recognizable bottle and name contributed to brand memory. The story also reflects the broader history of antiseptics. As germ theory gained acceptance, society looked for ways to control microbes in daily life. Disinfectants, soaps, and rinses became common. Listerine's path parallels this shift from hospital-only antiseptics to consumer hygiene products. Science moved from the operating room into the home. From a historical view, the naming after Joseph Lister is significant. It connects the product to the legacy of antiseptic surgery. Lister's work helped establish that infection could be reduced through chemical means. Though Listerine as a mouthwash serves a different context, the conceptual link to microbial control remains. The name carried authority during a time when scientific endorsement mattered. The development of Listerine shows how products can evolve alongside public understanding. As knowledge about bacteria spread, so did demand for antimicrobial solutions. Education and advertising worked together. The product's journey depended on both chemistry and communication. A formula alone does not define success. Its perceived role in daily life also matters. In the broader pattern of accidental inventions, Listerine represents adaptation across domains. A medical antiseptic became a personal care staple. The change did not happen overnight. It followed shifts in science, marketing, and social norms. Each step was grounded in practical use. Today, Listerine is widely recognized as a mouthwash brand. Its presence in stores and homes reflects more than a century of evolution. The liquid in the bottle connects to 19th century antiseptic research, even if most users think simply of oral hygiene. The history remains embedded in the name. The narrative unfolds calmly. A chemist formulates an antiseptic, names it after a pioneer, and sells it for medical use. Over time, its role broadens, its audience changes, and its identity settles in a new category. The transformation shows how inventions can travel across contexts when their properties allow it. Listerine's journey from surgical antiseptic to mouthwash illustrates how utility can be reinterpreted. Observation, timing, and public awareness shaped its path. The product did not change the world through dramatic technology, but it influenced daily hygiene habits. Its story reflects how scientific ideas about microbes entered everyday routines, carried in a bottle that began its life in the world of medicine. Scotchgard. Scotchgard originated in a research laboratory where the goal was not to protect fabrics, but to explore new chemical properties of fluorinated compounds. In the early 1950s, scientists at 3M were actively studying fluorochemistry, a field focused on materials containing fluorine atoms. Fluorinated compounds often display unusual behaviors, particularly in how they interact with water, oils, and surfaces. These materials can be highly stable and resistant to environmental effects. Researchers were interested in these qualities for industrial and chemical applications rather than household products. One of the scientists involved in this research was Patsy Sherman, a chemist working at 3M. In 1952, during an experiment involving fluorochemicals, a small accident occurred. A laboratory assistant accidentally spilled a few drops of an experimental fluorochemical mixture onto a canvas tennis shoe. Such spills were not unusual in laboratory environments, and typically they were cleaned without much thought. However, when the assistant tried to wash the shoe, something unexpected happened. The stained area resisted cleaning attempts in a surprising way. Instead of absorbing water or cleaning solutions, the fabric where the chemical had spilled began to repel them. Liquids beaded on the surface rather than soaking in. Even oily substances had difficulty penetrating the treated area. This behavior stood out because most fabrics readily absorb water and oils due to their porous structure. The spill had altered how the fabric interacted with liquids at a surface level. Sherman examined the effect more closely. She recognized that the fluorochemical had changed the surface energy of the fibers. In simple terms, it made the surface less attractive to water and oils. Liquids tend to spread on surfaces they can wet, but on low surface energy materials, they form droplets instead. Fluorinated molecules are particularly effective at lowering surface energy. Their molecular structure creates a kind of shield that resists interaction with many substances. The next step was to determine whether this effect could be reproduced deliberately. Accidental results are common in research, but only repeatable ones become useful. Sherman and her colleagues experimented with applying fluorochemical treatments to different fabrics. They tested how well-treated materials resisted stains from water, oil, and dirt. The results showed consistent repellency. Fabrics could remain cleaner because spills stayed on the surface long enough to be wiped away. Turning this discovery into a product required solving practical challenges. The treatment needed to bond to fibers without making them stiff, discolored, or uncomfortable. It also had to remain effective after normal use. Chemists worked on formulations that could be applied during manufacturing or as a finishing treatment. The process involved attaching fluorochemical chains to fabric surfaces so that the protective effect would persist. In 1956, 3M introduced Scotchgard as a commercial product. It was marketed as a fabric protector that could help repel stains and spills. The name suggested both protection and a connection to the Scotch brand identity already associated with 3M tapes. Early applications focused on upholstery, carpets, and clothing. These were areas where stains were common and cleaning could be difficult. The science behind Scotchgard is based on surface chemistry rather than creating a physical barrier. The treatment does not form a thick coating. Instead, it modifies the outermost surface of fibers. The fluorinated ends of the molecules orient outward, creating a surface that liquids do not easily wet. Because the treatment is thin and integrated at the surface, the fabric can remain breathable and flexible. This subtlety is part of why the product was practical. Consumers responded to the idea of stain resistance. Protecting furniture and clothing from spills had clear appeal. Homes with children or frequent guests especially valued easier maintenance. The product aligned with a broader mid-20th century interest in convenience and cleanliness. As synthetic fabrics and modern furnishings became common, protective treatments fit into the lifestyle narrative of care and longevity. Industrial uses also emerged. Treated textiles could perform better in environments where exposure to moisture or oils was frequent. Outdoor gear, uniforms, and specialty fabrics benefited from repellency. The same principle that kept a sofa cleaner could help maintain performance in demanding settings. This versatility expanded the product's reach. Over time, scientific understanding of environmental and health impacts evolved. Some fluorochemicals used historically in stain repellents raised concerns due to persistence in the environment. As research advanced, manufacturers, including 3M, worked to reformulate products to reduce environmental impact while maintaining performance. This led to changes in the types of fluorinated compounds used. The evolution reflects how materials science responds to new knowledge and standards. The accidental element in Scotchgard's story lies in the initial spill. A small laboratory mishap revealed a property that might otherwise have gone unnoticed. The key was not the spill itself but the decision to investigate it. Many accidents occur in labs, but only some lead to discoveries. Attention and curiosity turned an odd observation into a research direction. Patsy Sherman's role highlights the importance of observational skill in chemistry. Recognizing that the shoe behaved differently required awareness of what was normal. From there, systematic testing translated a chance event into controlled knowledge. The process followed scientific method. Observe, hypothesize, test, and refine. The accident opened the door, but methodical work built the path forward. Culturally, Scotchgard became associated with protection and prevention. Rather than cleaning after a stain, the idea was to reduce the chance of staining in the first place. This preventive mindset appears in many areas of technology and health. It reflects a shift from reaction to preparation. A small chemical treatment could extend the usable life of everyday items. From a materials perspective, the development of stain repellents contributed to surface science. Understanding how liquids interact with solids is important in coatings, electronics, and medical devices. Concepts like surface energy and wettability apply far beyond fabrics. The same principles influence how paints spread, how medical implants behave, and how waterproof materials are designed. Scotchgard's story connects to this broader scientific context. The product also demonstrates how invisible changes can have visible effects. The treatment cannot be easily seen once applied, yet its impact appears when a spill occurs. This subtlety differentiates it from thicker coatings or barriers. It works at a molecular scale but affects daily experience. Such technologies often go unnoticed until they are absent. Commercial success depended on trust and clear use instructions. Consumers needed to know when and how to apply the product. Proper application ensured better performance. Education through packaging and advertising helped users understand the benefit. Over time, the name Scotchgard became shorthand for stain resistance in general conversation. The story unfolds quietly. A laboratory, a spilled chemical, a shoe that would not absorb water. From that moment grew a line of protective treatments used on fabrics around the world. The progression was steady, grounded in chemistry and testing. There was no dramatic breakthrough moment beyond the initial surprise. The real work lay in making the effect reliable. In the broader pattern of accidental inventions, Scotchgard illustrates how small events can reveal useful properties. A spill could have been dismissed as a nuisance. Instead, it became a clue. Following that clue led to a product that influenced how people care for textiles. The path from accident to application required patience and expertise. Today, fabric protectors are common, and the idea of stain resistance feels familiar. Yet it traces back to a moment of observation in a fluorochemistry lab. The discovery shows how materials can be engineered to change interactions at the surface level. Such control allows fabrics to behave differently without changing their basic structure. Scotchgard's history reflects the interplay between chance and method. The accident provided the starting point. Scientific reasoning carried it forward. The result was a technology that quietly supports daily life by helping materials stay cleaner longer. Its story is a reminder that innovation sometimes begins with noticing what does not behave as expected and taking the time to understand why. Tea bags. The tea bag, now a quiet presence in kitchens and workplaces around the world, began not as a deliberate invention, but as a small commercial convenience that revealed an unexpected habit. Its story unfolds in the early 20th century, at a time when tea was already a deeply rooted global beverage. traded across continents and prepared through familiar rituals. Loose-leaf tea was the standard. Leaves were measured, placed into pots, and infused in hot water before being strained. This method emphasized patience and control, and it had changed little for generations. In 1908, a New York tea merchant named Thomas Sullivan sought a practical way to send samples of his tea to customers. Traditionally, tea samples were shipped in small metal tins, which protected the leaves but added cost and weight. Sullivan chose a simpler approach. He packaged portions of tea in small hand-sewn silk pouches. The intention was purely logistical. These pouches were meant to be opened, and the leaves inside were to be brewed in the usual way. The silk simply served as lightweight packaging. What followed was not part of Sullivan's plan. Some customers, receiving these silk packets, placed the entire pouch directly into hot water. Whether through misunderstanding or curiosity, they brewed the tea with the leaves still inside the silk. The result was surprisingly convenient. The pouch contained the leaves, reducing the need for strainers and making cleanup easier. The silk allowed water to flow through while holding the leaves in place. Customers began to request more of these pouches, not as packaging but as a brewing method. Sullivan noticed this shift in behavior through customer feedback. Orders referenced the small silk bags specifically. This indicated that people valued the format itself. The merchant recognized that an unintended use had become the main attraction. He adapted. Instead of expecting customers to discard the pouch, he began supplying tea in bags designed to be immersed. The object had transformed from container to tool. Early tea bags were still handmade and relatively expensive due to the use of silk. Silk was durable and porous, but it was not ideal for large-scale, low-cost production. As demand grew, alternatives were explored. Gauze and cheesecloth appeared as substitutes. Eventually, paper fiber materials were developed that balanced strength, porosity, and affordability. These papers were engineered to allow infusion while keeping fine particles contained. The shift from silk to paper marked an important step toward mass adoption. The design of tea bags also evolved. Flat, rectangular pouches were common at first. Later, double-chamber bags improved water circulation around the leaves, allowing more efficient extraction of flavor. Stapled strings and tags were added for convenience, making it easier to remove the bag from hot water. Each refinement addressed a small practical detail. None changed the essence of tea, but they changed how it fit into daily routines. The accidental origin of the tea bag influenced drinking culture. Brewing tea no longer required a pot, strainer, or precise measurement of loose leaves. A single serving could be prepared quickly in a cup. This suited fast-paced urban life, offices, and travel. It also introduced consistency. Each bag contained a measured amount, reducing variation between cups. For many people, this reliability became part of the appeal. From a scientific perspective, a tea bag is a controlled infusion system. Tea brewing depends on the movement of water through leaves, dissolving compounds such as polyphenol, caffeine, amino acids, and aromatic molecules. The bag acts as a permeable boundary. It must allow water in and dissolved compounds out while retaining the solid plant material. The pore size, fiber composition, and structure of the bag influence extraction. Too tight, and flavor is limited. Too loose, and particles escape. Designing the material required understanding fluid flow and filtration at a small scale. There is also a thermal aspect. Hot water increases molecular motion, speeding the transfer of soluble compounds. A tea bag's thin structure allows rapid heat transfer to the leaves. The relatively small volume of leaves in each bag changes the dynamics compared to a full teapot. The result is often a quicker brew. This matched the growing preference for speed and simplicity in the 20th century. Economically, tea bags reshaped the tea trade. They encouraged the use of smaller leaf grades and fannings, which infuse quickly and suit bagged formats. This influenced processing and sorting practices in tea production. While whole leaf teas remained valued, the bag created a parallel market focused on efficiency. Packaging technology, branding, and distribution adapted around this format. Supermarkets could stock large quantities in compact boxes, and consumers could store them easily at home. Culturally, the tea bag shifted the image of tea from a slow ritual to an accessible daily drink. In some regions, this democratized tea consumption, making it easier for more people to prepare. In others, it sparked debate about quality and tradition. Yet the format persisted because it answered practical needs. Over time, it became normal for many households, while loose-leaf brewing continued alongside it. Environmental awareness later influenced tea bag design as well. Concerns about waste and synthetic fibers led manufacturers to explore biodegradable materials and simpler constructions. This shows how even an accidental invention continues to evolve in response to new priorities. The core idea, however, remains the same as in Sullivan's unexpected discovery. Leaves contained in a permeable pouch, meeting hot water directly. The story of the tea bag is quiet compared to dramatic scientific breakthroughs. There was no laboratory accident with sparks or explosions. Instead, there was a small decision about packaging, followed by customer behavior that revealed a new possibility. The invention emerged from observation and adaptation. A merchant noticed how people actually used his product and allowed that use to guide development. This pattern appears often in the history of everyday technologies. An object designed for one role finds a better one through real-world interaction. The tea bag did not change what tea is at a chemical level. It changed the interface between the drink and the drinker. It reduced steps, tools, and time. In doing so, it altered habits on a global scale. Today, billions of cups of tea are brewed each year using bags. The small pouch represents a blend of material science, consumer behavior, and historical chance. Its presence feels ordinary, yet it traces back to a shipment of silk sample bags in New York over a century ago. The path from sample packaging to global standard was gradual, shaped by feedback and refinement rather than a single dramatic moment. The tea bag stands as an example of how convenience can become tradition. What began as a misunderstanding became a method. What began as packaging became part of the ritual. The leaves still meet hot water, releasing their flavors as they always have. The difference lies in the thin boundary that holds them, a boundary born from accident and sustained by usefulness. Saran Wrap. Saran Wrap emerged from mid-20th century chemical research in an era when laboratories were exploring new polymers with unusual protective qualities. The material did not begin as a kitchen product or a household convenience. Its origins lie in industrial chemistry, where scientists were searching for coatings and materials that could resist moisture, chemicals, and environmental damage. The path from laboratory experiment to food wrap was gradual, shaped by observation and practical adaptation rather than a direct plan to change how people store food. The story often traces back to research connected with the Dow Chemical Company in the 1930s. A laboratory worker examining new chemical compounds encountered a substance that formed a thin, clear film with remarkable resistance to water and air. This material was related to polyvinylidene chloride, a polymer known for strong barrier properties. It did not easily allow gases or moisture to pass through. Such characteristics were valuable in industrial settings where corrosion and contamination were constant concerns. Early versions of the material were not immediately suited for consumer use. The film had an unpleasant odor and a greenish tint. It also felt stiff and was not especially user-friendly. At this stage, it was considered more for protective coatings than for wrapping. One application involved coating military equipment to shield it from moisture and salt, especially during World War II. Protecting metal parts from corrosion was a serious logistical matter, and materials that could block water and oxygen were strategically useful. Chemists continued refining the formulation. By adjusting plasticizers and processing methods, they improved flexibility, clarity, and smell. Removing the odor and color was essential for any future consumer application. A wrap intended for contact with everyday items needed to appear clean and neutral. These refinements required careful control of polymer structure and additives. Small chemical changes could alter how the film behaved, from brittleness to stretchiness. The key scientific feature of saran-type films is their barrier performance. Many plastics are somewhat permeable to gases, meaning oxygen and moisture can slowly pass through. Polyvinylidene chloride has a molecular structure that creates a tighter barrier. Its chains pack in a way that reduces pathways for gas molecules. This makes it effective at slowing oxidation and moisture loss. For food, these factors directly influence freshness. Oxygen can promote spoilage, and moisture changes can degrade texture. As the material improved, its potential in food storage became clearer. A thin film that could cling to surfaces and limit air exposure offered practical benefits in kitchens. It allowed people to cover bowls, wrap leftovers, and protect ingredients. This aligned with changing domestic habits in the post-war period, when refrigeration was becoming common and people stored food for longer periods. A flexible wrap complemented the refrigerator by helping maintain quality. The commercial introduction of plastic food wrap in the mid-20th century fit into a broader trend of convenience-oriented products. Households were adopting packaged goods, modern appliances, and disposable items that simplified daily routines. A transparent film that sealed food without rigid containers matched this lifestyle shift. It also allowed visibility, so users could see what was stored without unwrapping it. From a material science perspective, cling behavior is important. Plastic wrap adheres lightly to surfaces and to itself due to a combination of surface forces and slight electrostatic effects. The film is thin and flexible, allowing it to conform to shapes. This creates a partial seal that reduces air exchange. It is not a perfect vacuum barrier, but it is effective enough for everyday storage. Achieving the right balance between cling and easy handling required tuning the formulation. Manufacturing such films involves extrusion processes, where molten polymer is formed into thin sheets. Controlling thickness is crucial. Too thick, and the wrap becomes stiff and wasteful. Too thin, and it tears easily. Engineers developed methods to produce consistent, very thin films at scale. This made the product affordable and widely available. Large rolls could be packaged for home use, with cutting edges on boxes for convenience. The name Saran itself became associated with this type of wrap, though over time different manufacturers used various plastics and formulations. As scientific and regulatory perspectives evolved, some companies shifted away from certain chlorine-containing polymers in food wrap. Alternative materials like polyethylene became common. These changes reflect how products adapt to new standards and consumer expectations while preserving the basic function of barrier and protection. Culturally, plastic wrap changed how people thought about leftovers and food preservation. Covering a dish quickly became a routine action. It reduced reliance on reusable lids and heavy containers for short-term storage. This small convenience influenced kitchen organization and meal planning. It also supported the practice of saving portions for later, which connects to reducing immediate food waste at the household level. The accidental aspect of Saran Wrap's history lies in the initial discovery of the film's unusual barrier qualities during chemical research that was not focused on food. Scientists were exploring materials for industrial protection. Noticing that a thin film could block moisture and air so effectively opened possibilities beyond the original intent. The transition from industrial coating to kitchen staple required recognizing that the same property useful for protecting metal could protect food. There is a quiet continuity between these uses. In both cases, the goal is to slow interaction with the environment. For metal, it is corrosion. For food, it is spoilage. The polymer does not distinguish between them. It simply limits the movement of gases and moisture. Human needs define the application. This illustrates how material properties can serve different domains when viewed through practical needs. Over decades, plastic wrap became an ordinary object, rarely considered in terms of chemistry. Yet each sheet represents polymer science, process engineering, and product design. Its transparency and flexibility are outcomes of deliberate refinement. Its everyday presence can obscure the complexity behind it. The journey from a laboratory curiosity to a global household item followed a path of incremental improvement. Environmental considerations have added another layer to the story. Single-use plastics raise concerns about waste and persistence. This has led to discussions about responsible use, recycling challenges, and alternatives. While these issues belong to modern context, they show that even accidental inventions continue to interact with society's evolving priorities. Materials that solved one problem can create new questions later. Saran Wrap's history is not defined by a single dramatic accident, but by noticing an unexpected property and pursuing it. A film that resisted moisture and air attracted attention for industrial reasons. Refinement made it suitable for daily life. The shift from laboratory material to consumer product reflects translation rather than sudden revelation. Careful development turned a protective coating into a flexible wrap. Today, the act of stretching a clear film over a bowl is simple and quiet. It is part of routine. Yet, behind that routine is a chain of chemistry and observation. A polymer with strong barrier properties, once studied for protection, found a place in kitchens worldwide. The invention did not change what food is, but it changed how food is kept between moments of preparation and consumption. In the broader pattern of accidental innovations, Saran Wrap shows how utility can migrate across contexts. A material discovered for one purpose can find a more familiar role elsewhere. The path depends on recognizing that a property valued in industry might also answer everyday needs. The thin, transparent film stands as a modest but influential example of how materials science enters daily life quietly, through objects that ask for little attention while performing a steady function. Vaseline, known scientifically as petroleum jelly, began its journey not in a pharmacy but in the rough environment of early oil fields. Its origin is tied to the growth of the petroleum industry in the 19th century, when drilling for oil was still a developing practice and many byproducts were poorly understood. Workers focused on extracting valuable fuels, and substances that appeared during drilling were often treated as nuisances. Among these was a thick, waxy residue that accumulated on drilling equipment. Oil workers noticed this sticky material collecting on the rods of pumps and drilling rigs. It was dark, semi-solid, and not obviously useful as a fuel. Because it interfered with machinery, it had to be scraped off regularly. Yet some workers observed a curious effect. They began applying the residue to minor cuts, burns, and skin irritations. In an era when medical access could be limited in remote oil fields, practical solutions were often improvised. Workers reported that the substance seemed to soothe skin and help protect wounds while they healed. One person who paid close attention to this behavior was Robert Chesebrew, a chemist. In the 1850s, he traveled to oil-producing regions in Pennsylvania to study petroleum and its derivatives. At the time, petroleum was becoming commercially important, and chemists were interested in refining it into useful products. Chesebrew learned about the waxy residue, sometimes called rod wax, from the workers. Instead of dismissing it as waste, he collected samples and brought them back to his laboratory for analysis. Chesebrew's approach was methodical. Crude petroleum contains a complex mixture of hydrocarbons, ranging from light volatile compounds to heavy waxes. The residue from drilling rods included heavier components that did not evaporate easily. Through a series of purification steps, such as distillation and filtration, Chesebrew worked to separate impurities and stabilize the substance. His goal was to create a consistent, refined material rather than a raw byproduct. The result was a semi-solid mixture of hydrocarbons with a smooth texture and stable properties. It was resistant to water, did not spoil easily, and formed a protective layer when applied to the skin. This layer could reduce moisture loss and shield minor wounds from external contaminants. While it was not a medicine in the pharmacological sense, it functioned as a protective ointment. Its usefulness came from physical properties rather than chemical reactivity. Chesebrew tested the material on himself, a practice not uncommon among researchers of that era. Demonstrations reportedly included applying it to small cuts or burns to show its protective effect. Whether every story surrounding these demonstrations is precise or partly shaped by later marketing, it is clear that Chesebrew believed in the product's value. He began promoting it as a healing aid and skin protectant. In 1870, he patented the purified substance and gave it a name: Vaseline. The word is often said to combine elements from German and Greek roots relating to water and oil, reflecting its oily yet smooth character. Naming helped position the product as a refined, reliable preparation rather than industrial residue. Packaging and branding played a significant role in its acceptance. Selling a petroleum-derived product for skin required trust, and a consistent identity helped build that trust. From a scientific viewpoint, petroleum jelly is an occlusive agent. It creates a barrier on the skin that slows the evaporation of water. Skin naturally loses moisture to the environment, and when this loss is reduced, the outer layer can remain more hydrated. This can support the skin's natural repair processes for minor damage. The barrier also provides a degree of protection against dirt and friction. These simple physical effects explain much of its perceived benefit. Vaseline's stability contributed to its success. Many organic substances can degrade, grow microbes, or develop odors over time. Properly refined petroleum jelly is chemically stable and has a long shelf life. It does not readily support bacterial growth because it contains no water and few reactive components. This made it practical for storage and transport, especially in a time before modern preservatives were common. As the product gained popularity, its uses expanded. People applied it to dry skin, chapped lips, and minor abrasions. It became a household item rather than a specialized remedy. Its versatility came from being gentle and inert for most users. Because it is largely non-reactive, it rarely causes chemical irritation when pure. This simplicity allowed it to fit many small roles in personal care. The broader impact of Vaseline connects to the idea of refining byproducts into useful goods. The petroleum industry produced many substances beyond fuels. Learning to purify and standardize them opened new markets. Petroleum jelly is one example of how waste or secondary materials can become valuable when their properties are understood. This reflects a pattern in industrial chemistry: observation, purification, and application. Culturally, Vaseline became associated with everyday care. It appeared in homes, medical kits, and travel bags. Its presence was quiet but persistent. Unlike specialized medicines, it did not promise dramatic cures. Instead, it offered simple protection and comfort. This modest role helped it endure across generations. Products that solve small, frequent problems often remain relevant. Over time, quality standards and regulations shaped how petroleum jelly is produced. Highly refined grades used for cosmetic and medical purposes must meet purity criteria. Removing potentially harmful impurities is essential. Modern refining techniques allow for controlled processing, ensuring consistency. This evolution shows how a product rooted in 19th-century industry adapted to modern expectations. The accidental dimension of Vaseline's story lies in the oil workers' informal use of rod wax on their skin. Their practical experimentation revealed a property that chemists later formalized. The workers were not conducting clinical trials. They were responding to daily needs. Chesabrew's contribution was recognizing potential in their observations and transforming a rough substance into a standardized product. There is a continuity between the oil field and the pharmacy shelf. The same hydrocarbon base runs through both contexts. What changes is the level of refinement, cleanliness, and presentation. The journey from residue to recognized product depended on chemistry and on communication. People needed to understand what it was and how to use it safely. Vaseline did not change the fundamentals of medicine, but it influenced personal care. It supported the idea that protecting skin and maintaining moisture could be beneficial. This aligns with modern dermatological understanding that the skin barrier plays a key role in health. Though simple, an occlusive layer can make a difference in certain conditions. The product's longevity suggests that its basic function remains relevant. In the history of accidental inventions, Vaseline represents a transformation of overlooked material into everyday utility. A substance scraped from machinery became a refined ointment. The change required curiosity and technical skill. It also required recognizing that value can hide in byproducts. Not every useful material appears in a clean or obvious form at first. Today, a small jar of petroleum jelly looks ordinary. It sits quietly among other personal care items. Yet its origin traces back to early oil rigs, where workers noticed something worth trying on a cut or burn. From that practical insight grew a product known worldwide. The story moves from field to laboratory to home, guided by the steady process of refinement and use. Vaseline's history shows how innovation can arise from paying attention to what people already do. Informal knowledge in a work environment became the seed for a commercial product. Science then clarified and stabilized it. The result is a substance valued not for complexity but for reliability. A simple barrier born from petroleum continues to serve a basic human need for protection and care. Nachos. Nachos began not in a laboratory or factory, but in a small restaurant near the U.S.-Mexico border, where a moment of improvisation quietly created one of the most recognizable snacks in the world. Their origin is tied to hospitality, resourcefulness, and the simple act of preparing food for unexpected guests. Unlike many inventions driven by research goals, nachos emerged from a practical need in a kitchen that had limited ingredients available at a particular moment. The widely accepted story takes place in 1943 in the Mexican border town of Piedras Negras, across from Eagle Pass, Texas. At that time, the region saw frequent cross-border movement, including American military families and shoppers visiting local establishments. One evening, a group of U.S. Army officers' wives arrived at the Victory Club restaurant after the main cook had already left for the day. The remaining staff faced a challenge: how to serve something satisfying without the full kitchen in operation. A maitre d' named Ignacio Anaya was present. Known by the nickname Nacho, a common short form of Ignacio in Spanish, he decided to prepare something using what was readily available. The kitchen still had tortillas, cheese, and pickled jalapeno peppers. These were basic ingredients, but they could be combined creatively. Anaya cut tortillas into pieces, fried or heated them to make them crisp, topped them with shredded cheese and jalapenos, and warmed the dish so the cheese softened. The result was simple yet appealing. The warm, crisp tortillas provided texture, the melted cheese added richness, and the jalapenos contributed a sharp, spicy note. When the guests asked what the dish was called, Anaya reportedly referred to it as Nachos Especials, meaning nacho specials. The name linked the food to its creator in a casual, natural way. Over time, the name shortened to simply nachos. From a culinary perspective, the dish worked because it balanced key sensory elements. Crispness, saltiness, fat, and heat are the accidental nature of nachos lies in their improvised creation. Ignacio Anaya was not attempting to invent a new global snack. He was solving an immediate problem, feeding guests with limited resources. The dish was born from what was on hand and from an understanding of how to combine ingredients quickly. Many culinary traditions include such moments, where necessity guides creativity. The timing also mattered. The 1940s were a period of cultural exchange along the border, and food ideas could move between communities. A dish that pleased visitors could be remembered and requested again. Repetition builds familiarity, and familiarity builds tradition. Over years, a spontaneous creation can become a standard offering. Nachos also illustrate how naming can influence memory. Associating the dish with nacho gave it a story. People often remember foods better when there is a human element behind them. The name carried a personal touch, even as the dish spread far beyond its place of origin. It connected a simple snack to an individual moment in a specific restaurant. Nutritionally, nachos are typically energy-dense, combining carbohydrates and fats. This contributes to their satisfying quality, but also explains why they are often considered an indulgent food. Their role is usually social and occasional rather than dietary staple. This aligns with their origin as a treat for guests rather than a daily meal. Over decades, nachos became integrated into popular culture. They appear at sports events, parties, and casual restaurants. Despite many elaborate versions, the foundational idea remains recognizable. Tortilla chips and cheese still define the dish. The endurance of that simple formula shows how strong a basic concept can be when it appeals to taste and convenience. The story of nachos is calm and grounded. There was no scientific breakthrough or industrial process behind their birth. Instead, there was a person in a kitchen making do with available ingredients. This kind of invention highlights a different form of creativity, culinary intuition shaped by circumstance. It reminds us that innovation can occur in everyday settings, guided by practical judgment. From a historical viewpoint, Nachos represent a small but clear example of cross-cultural food exchange. A Mexican restaurant serving American visitors created a dish that would later be embraced widely in the United States and beyond. Food often travels along paths of contact and trade, carrying elements of its origin while adapting to new contexts. Nachos followed this pattern quietly. The original plate prepared by Ignacio Anaya was likely modest in size and presentation. Yet its influence grew far beyond that evening. The dish did not rely on rare ingredients or complex techniques. Its strength was accessibility. Anyone with tortillas, cheese, and peppers could recreate it. This reproducibility helped it spread across kitchens and borders. In the broader landscape of accidental inventions, nachos show how a moment of hospitality can leave a lasting mark. A quick decision to combine a few ingredients led to a snack recognized worldwide. The process was not driven by experimentation for its own sake, but by the desire to serve guests well. Practical kindness and culinary sense worked together. Today, when people share a plate of nachos, they participate in a tradition that began with a simple solution in a border town restaurant. The layers of chips and cheese may look ordinary, but their origin reflects improvisation and attentiveness. A dish prepared to meet a need became a familiar comfort food. Its story moves quietly from one kitchen to many, carried by taste and memory rather than by formal invention. Dry cleaning. Dry cleaning, despite its name, is not truly dry. It is a method of cleaning textiles using liquids that are not water. Its origin lies in observation and accident rather than a planned search for a new cleaning system. The story begins in the 19th century, when clothing care was labor-intensive and water-based. Washing posed risks to certain fabrics. Delicate garments, wool, and structured pieces could shrink, distort, or lose color when soaked and scrubbed. People understood that water was not always a gentle partner for textiles, but alternatives were limited. One commonly told origin story centers on Jean-Baptiste Joly, a French dye-works owner in the mid-1800s. According to historical accounts, a servant in his household accidentally spilled a petroleum-based solvent, often described as kerosene or camphene, onto a dirty tablecloth. Instead of ruining the fabric, the liquid appeared to clean it. The stained areas looked lighter once the solvent evaporated. Joly noticed that greasy marks and dirt had been reduced rather than spread. This outcome contrasted with water, which can sometimes set certain stains or leave marks if not used carefully. Whether every detail of this story is exact or partly simplified over time, it reflects a real chemical principle. Many stains on clothing are oil-based or contain non-polar substances. Water, being a polar molecule, does not dissolve oils effectively. The familiar phrase "oil and water do not mix" describes this mismatch. Petroleum-based solvents, however, are non-polar. They can dissolve oils, greases, waxes, and similar substances more readily. A spill of such a solvent could indeed loosen and carry away oily dirt. Joly reportedly began experimenting with cleaning fabrics using these solvents in a more controlled way. Instead of treating the event as a curiosity, he explored its repeatability. He developed a business that used petroleum solvents to clean garments without immersing them in water. This approach attracted clients who wanted to preserve the shape and quality of their clothing. Fine garments were expensive, and methods that extended their life were valuable. Early dry cleaning used solvents like gasoline, kerosene, benzene, and turpentine. These substances were effective at dissolving oils, but they came with serious risks. Many were highly flammable. Cleaning operations that used them faced the danger of fires and explosions, especially in enclosed spaces. As the industry grew, safety became a pressing concern. Operators had to manage storage, ventilation, and handling carefully. Accidents did occur, pushing the search for safer alternatives. The term dry cleaning emerged to distinguish this process from traditional washing. The word dry referred to the absence of water rather than the absence of liquid. Garments were still immersed and agitated in fluid, just not in water. The process relied on the solvent's ability to penetrate fibers and dissolve soils. After cleaning, the solvent was drained, filtered, and often reused. The clothes were then dried as the solvent evaporated. From a scientific standpoint, Dry cleaning works through solubility and mechanical action. When a garment is placed in solvent, oils and greases on the fabric dissolve into the liquid. Gentle tumbling helps the solvent move through the textile, increasing contact with soiled areas. Detergent-like additives can be included to help suspend dirt particles. Filtration systems remove contaminants from the solvent so it can be recycled within the machine. This combination of chemistry and motion produces the cleaning effect. In the 20th century, the industry shifted toward less flammable solvents. One of the most significant was perchloroethylene, often called PERC. It is a chlorinated solvent that is non-flammable and effective at dissolving many stains. Its adoption reduced fire risk and allowed more standardized equipment. Machines could be designed as closed systems, where solvent was circulated, cleaned, and reused with limited exposure to the outside environment. This improved consistency and safety compared to earlier open handling. Dry cleaning also influenced garment design and labeling. As the method became common, manufacturers began indicating whether items should be dry cleaned. Some fabrics and constructions respond better to solvent cleaning than to water. Structured suits, garments with linings, and certain fibers maintain their form more reliably under dry cleaning. Care labels helped communicate this to consumers, linking textile science with daily practice. The accidental insight behind dry cleaning lies in noticing that a non-water liquid could remove stains effectively. The spilled solvent on a cloth revealed a mismatch between common assumptions and chemical reality. Water was not the universal cleaner people might imagine. Different types of dirt require different approaches. Recognizing this opened a path to a parallel cleaning tradition that still exists today. Over time, environmental and health considerations shaped the field. Some solvents raised concerns due to toxicity and environmental persistence. This led to tighter regulations, improved machine designs, and exploration of alternatives. Newer methods include hydrocarbon solvents with different properties, liquid carbon dioxide systems, and wet cleaning techniques that use carefully controlled water-based processes for delicate items. These developments show how an industry evolves as knowledge and priorities change. Despite technological shifts, the core idea remains consistent. Use a liquid suited to the chemistry of the stain and the sensitivity of the fabric. Dry cleaning establishments became part of urban life, offering specialized care beyond what most households could manage. They handled pressing, finishing, and stain treatment alongside solvent cleaning. The service model grew around the chemical process, creating a recognizable trade. Culturally, dry cleaning supported fashions that relied on tailored and delicate garments. Business suits, formal wear, and specialty fabrics could be maintained more easily. This, in turn, influenced how people dressed for work and events. When maintenance becomes feasible, certain styles become more practical. In this way, a cleaning method quietly interacts with clothing culture. The story of dry cleaning is steady rather than dramatic. A spill revealed a property. Experiments followed. Businesses formed around the insight. Technology improved safety and efficiency. Each step built on the previous one. There was no single moment when the modern system appeared fully formed. Instead, there was a gradual refinement of solvents, machines, and practices. In the landscape of accidental inventions, dry cleaning stands as an example of applied chemistry guided by observation. Someone noticed that a fabric looked cleaner after contact with a solvent. That observation challenged the assumption that water was always best. From there, practical methods developed. The invention did not change what dirt is, but it changed how people remove certain kinds of dirt from certain materials. Today, when a garment is tagged for dry cleaning, it reflects more than a care instruction. It reflects a historical path that began with an unexpected cleaning effect. The quiet interaction between solvent and stain, between fiber and liquid, carries forward a 19th century realization. A simple accident revealed that cleanliness could be approached in more than one way, and that different materials respond to different chemistries. Dry cleaning remains a reminder that solutions sometimes appear in ordinary mishaps. A spill that might have been dismissed as a problem instead became a clue. Following that clue led to a service and an industry that handle millions of garments. The process operates behind the scenes of daily life, preserving fabrics and forms. Its origin rests on a moment when someone noticed that a tablecloth looked better after a solvent touched it, and chose to understand why. Brownies. Brownies are now a familiar dessert, recognized for their dense texture, deep chocolate flavor, and compact form somewhere between a cake and a cookie. Their origin, however, is often linked to small kitchen missteps and practical decisions rather than a single, carefully planned invention. Like many foods that become traditions, brownies appear to have emerged from the everyday realities of baking, where measurement, timing, and ingredient balance quietly shape results. In the late 19th century, chocolate was already well established in desserts, but baking chocolate cakes typically required precise proportions of flour, fat, sugar, eggs, and leavening agents such as baking powder. Leavening creates gas bubbles in batter, allowing cakes to rise and develop a light, airy crumb. When leavening is reduced or omitted, the structure changes. The batter sets more densely, producing a compact texture. This simple chemical fact underlies many stories about how brownies began. One popular explanation is that a baker accidentally left out baking powder while preparing a chocolate cake. Without enough leavening, the cake would not rise as expected. Instead of becoming tall and fluffy, it would remain low and dense. Rather than discarding the result, the baker might slice and serve it. The outcome would be rich, moist, and intensely flavored. Whether this exact moment happened in a single kitchen or in several places independently is difficult to verify, but the scenario is consistent with baking science. Another historically cited origin involves the Palmer House Hotel in Chicago in the 1890s. A dessert was reportedly created for an event requiring a compact, portable treat that could fit into boxed lunches. The requested dessert needed to be smaller than a slice of cake but more substantial than a cookie. A chocolate confection with a dense crumb and a glaze met those needs. While recipes and details evolved, this account shows that the brownies' form suited practical constraints. A dessert that travels well and holds together has clear advantages. From a food science perspective, brownies occupy an interesting space. Their texture depends heavily on the ratio of fat, sugar, flour, and eggs. Higher fat and sugar content relative to flour encourages a fudgy consistency. Sugar attracts and holds moisture, while fat contributes to tenderness and richness. Eggs provide structure through proteins that coagulate when heated. With limited leavening, there are fewer air pockets, so the interior remains tight and moist. Small changes in ratios can shift a brownie from cakey to fudgy. Chocolate itself plays multiple roles. Cocoa solids provide flavor and color, while cocoa butter contributes fat. Melted chocolate can change how batter behaves compared to cocoa powder alone. When chocolate melts and then sets during cooling, it helps create the characteristic dense bite. The balance between melted chocolate and dry ingredients influences whether the final product feels smooth, chewy, or crumbly. The name brownie likely comes from the dessert's color. The term was used in American cookbooks by the early 20th century. Recipes began to circulate in print, helping standardize the idea. Once a recipe appears in a cookbook, it can be repeated with some consistency, turning a local creation into a shared one. Printed recipes also reduce reliance on memory, allowing more people to reproduce similar results. Brownies fit well into changing domestic life of the 20th century. They are baked in a single pan, cut into portions, and served without elaborate assembly. This efficiency suits home kitchens. They also keep reasonably well for several days, making them practical for families and gatherings. As packaged cocoa and chocolate became more widely available, ingredients were easier to obtain. Accessibility supports popularity. Culturally, brownies became associated with comfort and informality. They appear at school events, family meals, and community gatherings. Their simplicity invites variation. Nuts, frostings, or flavor additions can be included. Yet the core identity remains a square or rectangle of dense chocolate dessert. Even when decorated, the underlying structure is familiar. This stability helps a food remain recognizable across regions. The accidental aspect of brownies connects to the idea that not all successful foods begin as perfect outcomes. Baking is sensitive to measurement. Too little flour, too much fat, or missing leavening can change a cake significantly. In many kitchens, such results might be seen as mistakes. But when the taste is appealing, a mistake can become a new category. The line between error and innovation is sometimes defined by whether people enjoy the result. Heat control also matters. Baking involves complex transformations. Starches gelatinize, proteins set, sugars dissolve and sometimes caramelize. The Maillard reaction, a chemical process between amino acids and sugars, contributes to the brown surface and rich flavor. Brownies often have a thin, slightly glossy crust on top, formed by dissolved sugar and egg proteins interacting at the surface. Beneath that crust lies the softer interior. This contrast adds to their appeal. Over time, commercial mixes simplified preparation further. Pre-measured dry ingredients allowed consistent results with minimal effort. This did not change the fundamental nature of brownies but broadened their reach. People with limited baking experience could produce a familiar dessert. Convenience products often reinforce the popularity of foods that are already liked. Historically, it is difficult to assign brownies to a single inventor. Multiple kitchens may have arrived at similar results through small variations. Recipes evolve through sharing and adaptation. What matters is that the dessert form proved satisfying and repeatable. Once people recognized its appeal, they intentionally recreated it. At that point, it shifted from accident to tradition. Brownies also illustrate how texture influences perception. A dense, moist bite can feel indulgent even in a small portion. Because brownies are rich, they are often served in modest sizes. This makes them suitable for sharing. Foods designed for portioning often become social desserts. They can be arranged on trays and distributed easily. This practicality supports their presence at gatherings. The story of brownies is calm and domestic. There are no laboratories or industrial discoveries here, only kitchens, ovens, and measured ingredients. Yet the principles at work are still chemical and physical. Leavening gases, protein networks, sugar concentration, and heat transfer all shape the result. Understanding these processes explains why a missing or reduced ingredient can create a new texture. In the broader theme of accidental inventions, brownies represent how everyday experimentation leads to lasting foods. A cake that did not rise properly could have been a disappointment. Instead, it revealed a different pleasure. The dense chocolate square did not try to imitate a cake. It became its own category. Naming and repeating it solidified its place. Today, brownies are baked in homes and bakeries around the world. Their appearance is simple and their preparation is straightforward, yet their flavor is deeply satisfying. Behind that simplicity lies a history of small variations and practical adjustments. A dessert shaped by what might once have been an error now stands as a classic. The quiet lesson in the brownie's origin is that outcomes in cooking are not always fixed. When people pay attention to what works, even unexpected results can be kept and refined. A low, dense chocolate bake once seen as imperfect found appreciation. Over time, it earned its own identity. The brownie remains a reminder that in the kitchen, as in other areas of life, careful observation can turn a minor mistake into a lasting pleasure. Ending. Thank you for spending this time with these stories of accidental invention. If you enjoyed this journey, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps the project grow. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments and tell which story stayed with you the most. You can also share this video with friends who enjoy science and history. Your curiosity and engagement keep these stories alive.